Okie dokie. Well, welcome to Bible and Bodybuilding with the bear. Slightly anorexic bear. And we are going to try to tackle Exodus chapter 38 today in the Old Testament. In the second book of the Old Testament, second book of the Pentateuch. We are in the construction project phase of the mobile temple. There's a lot of verbiage declaring sizings, how to build it. And to be honest with you, for me, getting a verbal description, it's hard to picture it. Kind of like reading it sometimes. It's hard to picture it, but when you see it, that really sinks in for me. Like, it's good for me if I can just see a picture of it assembled, and I can say, okay, yeah, I see that. But verbal transitioning from one generation to the next in this time period was it. They didn't quite have the luxury that we have of so many books and videos, and we have it. We have all the descriptions in pretty much any way you want. You can see a picture of it, you can see a video of it, you can get it in writing, you can have somebody tell it to you over the phone. But today we have the written transition of what God told and gifted men to then put into play. And so here we go. That was enough bare verbiage there. Let's get to the real thing. Chapter 38 of Exodus. And he made the altar of burnt offering of shittim wood. 5 cubits was the length thereof, 5 cubits the breadth thereof, and it was 4 square, and 3 cubits the height thereof. So it was, that baby was, about 6'2"-ish, 6'3"-ish. And so that was, and you picture 5 cubits, just go 1 3/4 times 5, and you'd have a pretty good. It was big, and then they probably had a little platform or something around it, and so it was big. And obviously they had to put sheep and cattle and goats and rams on it, so it had to be big and sturdy. Verse 2. And he made horns at the corners of it for tying down the animal, because when the animal got cooked in the fire, the thing twitched. Like if you ever put a T-bone or a sirloin on the grill or the steak, it has a tendency to want to flip up on you, right? So they had horns at the corners. And he made the horns thereof on the 4 corners of it. The horns thereof were of the same, and he overlaid it with brass. So you see, in some of the things that were in the Holy of Holies, that them babies were all gold. Those were overlain with gold. Once you get out now to the basic working stuff, then you had bronze and brass. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots, the shovels, the basins, the flesh hooks, and the fire pans. All the vessels thereof made he of brass. And he made for the altar a brazen grate of network underneath the compass thereof, beneath unto the midst of it. Like when you have your grill, you got the top part, right, where you have put your steaks, your hamburgers, your brats, your hot dog, that kind of stuff. Then you have a lower grate that catches the coal and the fat pieces that burn on through, and maybe used a little hickory wood or something to bring a nice smell. It kind of captures all of that. So that grating, there was a grating. And he cast four rings for the four ends of the grate of brass to be placed for the staves, so they could haul out the big ashes and bones and all that kind of stuff. And he made the staves of shittim wood and overlaid them with brass. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar to bear it withal. He made the altar hollow with boards. So it had a little compartment below with a secondary place, and very sturdy. And he made the laver of brass, and the foot of it of brass, of the looking glasses of the women assembling, which assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. I mean, this is old King James. I'm going to retranslate that. You know, as I've read several other translations, I'm thinking, you guys had little looking glasses so the women that were standing outside could see, you know, or you know, they're little old lady spectacles, right? But no, this is more, had the mirrors. They had them babies polished up so they could see that their hair was just right, you know, and they could put on lips and eyeshadow and all that kind of stuff that the women did. And they had not mirrors like we have now, but they had copper, brass, silver, gold, with these little, depending on what part of society was, that were polished. So they were like mirrors, and then they used those. That's what they used. They're little polished mirrors of brass. They made into the lavers. Verse 9. And he made the court on the south side southward. The hangings of the court were of fine twined linen, and 100 cubits. So a baby was long. Once again, multiply that baby by 1.5 or 1 3/4 times 100. Their pillars were 20, and their brazen sockets 20. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets were of silver, and for the north side of the hangings were 100 cubits, and their pillars were 20, and their sockets of brass 20. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the west side were hangings of 50 cubits, and their pillars 10, and their sockets 10, the hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the east side, eastward 50 cubits. The hangings of one side of the gate were 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. So once again, you had the long ways 100, sideways 50, and then you had an entryway like you have in your home. You know, sometimes some homes have 1 or 2 entrances, some homes have 3, like if you have a underground. Our home has that because it's old 1800s, built in the original building, built in the early 1800s. And then they added on another building, and then the paperwork started, and then another building was built on. Anyway, they had, you know, a big cistern underneath the basement of whatever it was initially, with the stairs, or, you know, where old cellar was down there, and then it was converted up to another building. And so they had entryways or gates of the whole sanctuary area. So that was an additional thing that they had to make up with pillars and sockets and tapestries and all that kind of stuff to make it look beautiful. And for the other side of the court gate, on this hand and that hand, were hangings of 15 cubits, and their pillars 3 and sockets 3. All the hangings of the court round about were of fine twined linen, and the sockets for the pillars were of brass, the hooks of the pillars, their fillets of silver, and their overlaying of their chapiters of silver, and all the pillars of the court were filleted with silver. And the hangings of the gate of the court was needlework of blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen, and 20 cubits was the length, and the height and the breadth was 5 cubits, answerable to the hangings of the court. So in other words, in comparison, like a match. And it's kind of interesting, you know, you have the purple coverings here. If you look at some of the stories in the gospel of the crucifixion and what the soldiers did in a very cruel way to Jesus, but they put a robe on him that was purple. So kind of there's some similarities, because when God does something, it's a similarity of something else here on earth and also in heaven. Because God's cool like that. He can make all these things, and when we look back and we go, wow, that was like a plan. He had a plan. If anybody has a plan, God has a plan. A dumb bear doesn't have much of a plan. I try to have a plan, but not like some people really have a plan. God has the greatest plan of all, because he's awesome, right? Okay. Fine twined linen, blue and purple, scarlet, fine twined linen. 20 cubits was the length, and the height and the breadth was 5 cubits, answerable to the hangings of the court, and their pillars were 4, and their sockets of brass 4, their hooks of silver, and the overlaying of their chapiters, and their fillets of silver, and all the pins of the tabernacle and of the court round about were of brass. So you see, some of the internal things were in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place, and they move out to the holy place, where the priest would come and have the bread and the candle, the olive oil burning, and the incense. That was just outside the little covering, not outside the tent, in the same tent, but they had the little veil. And then the high priest would then go into the Holy of Holies once a year with the blood. And so it was all just right, just nicely laid out. And in the Holy of Holies and in the holy place, things were overlaid with gold, very high cost, special, precious metals. And as you move out, then you have the lesser. You have silver and brass and bronze and that kind of thing. 21. This is the sum of the tabernacle, even of the tabernacle of testimony, as it was counted according to the commandment of Moses for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son to Aaron the priest. And Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses, and with him was Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and a cunning workman, and an embroiderer in blue and in purple and in scarlet and fine linen. You got to be really gifted to be involved in this kind of project. And I praise the Lord that we're not doing that same thing here, because I am not gifted in that whatsoever. I can do my trade, my field, and other fields a little bit. But this kind of trade these are like artists, craftsmen. Like way back in the Renaissance times, where they're chiseling out statues out of marble. That's cool. That's like this. They did that then too. But as a comparison, we can still see some of the statues they made in the Renaissance time that were chiseled out in marble, and they're still beautiful. They're craftsmen. They're skilled artists. All the gold that was occupied for the work and all the work of the holy place, even the gold of the offering, was 29 talents. That's a lot. And 730 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. The silver of them that were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,760 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. A bikah for every man, that is half shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary, for every one that went to be numbered from 20 years old and upward, for 600,000 and 3,550 men. When they took a census, they're supposed to, like if our state here in Wisconsin and North America said it's time to take a census, it would be automatically and customary that I would take money with me and pay that into the pot. And they would know, and then they would sign my name on it, and that I was registered for the census, and then I paid my dues, and from that dues we call it taxes, but that's kind of the way they did it. And of the 100 talents of silver were cast the sockets of the sanctuary, and the sockets of the veil, and 100 sockets of the 100 talents, a talent for a socket. And of the 1,770 and 5 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars, and overlaid their chapiters, and filleted them. And the brass of the offering was 70 talents, and 2,400 shekels, and therewith he made the sockets to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the brazen altar, and the brazen grate for it, and all the vessels of the altar, and the sockets of the court round about, and the sockets of the court gate, and the pins of the tabernacle, and all the pins of the court round about. Probably many of you have gone camping. You can raise your bare paws up there. I like to go out hiking and spend the day and pitch whatever I have out in the woods as a kind of bivouac area for the day and for the lunchtime, and then do hiking and then move on out of the woods by night usually. But if you're really going to go out on a big camping trip where you're spending the night and maybe the weekend, maybe the week, maybe you live in a tent, there's a lot of effort into keeping the tent strong as a tank while using, the materials we have now, nylon, polyester, canvas, and you want to make them babies tight so that if there's a storm, it doesn't blow that baby down and topple it down. So you're in the middle of a thunderstorm, you're trying to put the tent back up. So you want to keep it nice and strong and sturdy. And that's what they did. They had a serious mobile tabernacle in the form of a massive mega tent. And I don't know if heaven we're really going to be able to look back in time and say, "Ooh, look at that! Look at that cool mobile temple they had, that tabernacle." But whatever they made on earth was a picture of something beautiful in heaven. And we've done our Revelation study, and what we can see is a verbal description from the scriptures. We can't really even imagine it. Like if you look up at the stars and you say to yourself, this is really awesome. And so if you look up in the heavens at night and you see the constellations, Orion, the little scorpion, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, you point out the North Star, those are cool. And in that coolness, God has allowed us to see beauty in every direction from Earth, millions of light years away. And the stronger we make our telescopes and radar scopes and infrared scopes, the more powerful we make them, the farther we can see. And we can see that it just keeps going on and on and on, because God is what? God is awesome. God bless you, friends. See you next time.